Today, I'd like to tell you one of the less well-known stories in the Bible. It's about a guy called Job. Here he is. Now Job, says the Bible, was a good man, careful to do all that the Lord asked him. And as a result, God thought this was great. He'd even blessed Job. He'd given him 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, and 500 oxen. But more important than that to Job was the whole bunch of sons that God had given to him. And daughters too, I should say. Now, one day, when the angels were gathered in God's presence, there was someone there that you might not have expected to be around. And when God saw that the devil was there, he said to him, "Have you seen my servant Job?" Who, I've got to be honest, God had been keeping an eye on. Now, as it happens, the devil had heard of his servant Job, and he was probably got a bit worried by Job, I think. So the devil said to God, "Well, yes, I know Job and how good he is, but let's face it, I mean, who wouldn't be good if they got all that stuff from you? But trust me," said the devil, "if you took away all the things that Job has, he'd be just like anybody else, as bad as the next man." "Very well," says God, "we'll see. He's in your power, but you mustn't lay one finger on Job himself." So the devil went away, and the very next day, all of a sudden, whilst Job's sons and daughters were at a party in a neighbour's tent — they weren't big on houses in those days — a messenger arrived for Job and said, "Master, you know your 3,000 camels?" "Yes," said Job. "Well," said the messenger, "they've been stolen." "What?" said Job. And no sooner had that messenger delivered his message than another messenger ran up. And he said, "Master, you know your 500 oxen?" "Yes," said Job. "Well," said the messenger, "they've been stolen too." "What?" said Job. And then, just after that messenger had run up, another messenger came along and he said, "Master, you know your 7,000 sheep?" "Let me guess," said Job, "they've been stolen." "Don't be ridiculous," said the messenger. "Who's going to steal sheep? No. They are all dead." Now, when Job heard this, he thought to himself, "This is ridiculous. I've heard about bad days, but what else could possibly go wrong?" And at that moment, another messenger ran up, and he said, "Master, I was with your sons and daughters at the party, and a huge east wind blew, and as it blew, the whole tent collapsed. And everybody died, and only I escaped to come to tell you." When Job heard this, he was heartbroken. He tore his clothes, and, says the Bible, he shaved his head, which is apparently what they did in those days to show they weren't very happy. And then he sat down. Now, you might have thought that after all that had happened to him, Job would rant and rage against God, saying, "How can you let this happen to me?" But he didn't. Instead, Job simply said this. He said, "The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Now, some time later, the angels were once again in the presence of God. And once again, there was somebody there who you wouldn't have expected to be there. When God saw the devil there, he said, "Have you seen my servant Job? Have you seen how faithful to me he remains, even though you incited me against him without any reason?" Said the devil. But then, all of a sudden, the devil had an idea. "Well, yes," said the devil, "you're right. He hasn't gone bad as I perhaps hoped he would do. But, let's face it, he's actually no worse off than anybody else at the moment. If you were to say, give him an illness, and he found out that he was worse off than everybody else, he would curse you right to your face. Let me show you." "Very well," said God, "he's in your power, but you mustn't kill him." So the devil went away, and that very same day, all of a sudden Job started to feel a little bit off colour. His temperature started to rise, and he broke out in a huge rash of boils. Feeling ill and sad, Job sat down in his backyard. Where his wife saw the state he was in, she said to him, "Oh, you'd be better off dead." He'd always worried a little bit about Job and his wife. But even then, even after all that had happened to him, still Job would not say anything bad about God. He simply said, "We take good times from God. Should we not also take bad times too?" And there he sat all alone until 3 friends popped round for a visit. Now, these friends, each of them seemed to have their own idea about why these things had happened to Job. So the first friend, he said, Job, you know your problem. You haven't been praying enough. Trust me," he says, "all of these things, they're just part of life. And if you just pray to God, he'll fix them all and you'll be fine." "What do you think I've been doing?" says Job. "Every night I cry myself to sleep. Every morning I wake up, there are still tears in my eyes. I've been praying my heart out to God, but I cannot convince him to do anything about this." "You're quite right," said the second friend. "You know, Job, don't pay any attention to him. That's not the issue here. No. You see, what this is that God, he's trying to teach you a lesson. He just wants you to come to understand him and know him better. And trust me, Job, this is all for the good. It'll all work out perfect in the end, as soon as you learn whatever it is that God wants you to learn." "If this is a lesson," says Job, "it's the craziest lesson there's ever been. I'd be better to be dead than to have gone through this lesson. I'd be better to have never been born. Your answer doesn't make any sense." "You're quite right," said the third friend. "Let me tell you, Job, really why this is happening. You see, Job, this is happening because of all of the bad things that you've done. All of the times when you've broken God's laws and rules. And this is God punishing him for all the bad things that you've done. And as soon as you've stopped doing those bad things," said the other person, "you'll be fine." "Are you kidding me?" says Job. "I haven't done any of those things. And even if I had done things like that, you lot have done twice as much bad stuff as I have, and I don't see any of this happening to you." No, says Job. "I've had a long time to think about it, and I've reached my conclusion. The only thing I can figure out is that God must have made a mistake." Now that was a pretty foolish thing to say, because God knows everything. But if that was foolish, then what Job said next was really kind of dumb. Because Job said, "Oh, if only God was here. If only God was here right now, I'd tell him a thing or two." Now that was a very foolish thing to say, because at that moment, God turned up. In the middle of a storm, he appears to Job and says to him, "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Tell me, Job, if you're so clever. Let me ask you a few questions, see how you get on answering them. Where were you, Job, when I laid the foundations of the earth, when I measured out its dimensions? Tell me if you know. Or perhaps," says God, "you could explain to me where I store all the snow and hail. If you know so much, I'm sure you can answer an easy little question like that." "Or what about the rain?" says God. "Can you tell it where to go? Can you tell it when to start and when to stop? Are you in control of the weather if you're so clever?" "Or what about the raging bull?" says God. "Can you give him advice? And will he do what you tell him?" Job realised that he'd bodged, and he said, "Lord, I have spoken about things that I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to comprehend. I will say no more." Now Job never did get an answer as to why those things happened to him. God never even explained to Job about the whole devil and the conversation up in heaven. But perhaps Job's answer came in what happened next. Because God gave back to Job all that he'd lost and more besides. And as a Christian, I know that there are going to be times in life when things happen to me that I don't understand. When things go wrong. And being a Christian doesn't stop things going wrong in your life. But I guess, unlike Job, I have an advantage. I know how the story ends, because I know that if I'm a follower of Jesus, he will give me a place in heaven, no questions asked, where every wrong will be made